What's up? I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dakota.
And this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast,
where we interview successful businessmen and women to let you in on why success doesn't have a single formula to follow.
We also have a little bourbon tasting along the way, because why not?
Why not?
So guys, please enjoy this episode and let us know your thoughts at Bourbon and Business Podcast on Instagram.
Coming to you from the Bourbon and Business Studio here in the Capitol Club in downtown Jackson, Mississippi. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dakota.
And this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast.
Sounded like Batman.
Well, you sounded like Batman.
I'm Dakota.
I guess I'm Robin then.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
well, tell our
Joker.
listeners a little bit about the Capitol Club.
The Capitol Club is the premier event space here in downtown Jackson, Mississippi. They've got daily lunches, they've got event space, they've got networking events, they've got parking garage, they've got everything.
Yeah. So if you're wondering about this view that we have behind us, we have a lot of people ask us about it. It is at the Capitol Club.
20th floor. But
Yep. So if you want to view it, become a member, and you can come do that.
yeah,
And then you want to
hang out with us.
introduce our guests to us.
Yes, today we have special guest Meg Crosby, co-founder and principal of PeopleCap Advisors. Meg, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Although I kind of wish I was there sipping bourbon with you.
I tell you what, it is a luxury.
Somebody's got to do it on Monday.
Yeah, somebody's got it. That's right.
We appreciate you coming on. And then what are we sipping on?
Today we're sitting on Crittendens, and you might have recognized the name. We've had Crittendens before. This is Cut Above Iara. I think that's how it's pronounced. Mother of the Waters. So pretty cool bottle. It's got like a siren on it, or a mermaid, for those of you who like the word mermaid.
So this is made here in Mississippi.
Yes, it is.
So-
Just outside of Hattiesburg, I believe.
So it's got a burn to it. If you
Okay.
notice my little cough that came
Yep,
with it. So there's a lot going on with this bourbon today. I mean, it is like,
Kind of like you, huh?
it's like fireworks.
Yeah.
When you take a sip of it. So very interesting. I like it. Interesting in a good way.
Wow.
Takes you on
Okay.
several different journeys.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you get more detailed into the taste and all that, because I don't want to mess it up.
Very.
But I like it, especially for. I did look at this bottle before. It is a 108 proof. So typically, I guess the proof
That is incorrect.
is that incorrect?
It's 108.5 proof.
108.5. But a great burn. I like it. I might have to give it a 9.2.
Okay.
So
okay.
for a high proof,
Yeah.
I like it.
Good. There's a lot going on there. You're
Yep.
right.
It's a
A
lot.
lot going on.
Well, Meg, we appreciate you coming on. We like to always start this, kind of give our listeners your background and where you're from, and then, what is PeopleCap, and then how you got started there.
Sure, happy to. So I'm right up the road, born and raised in Memphis, and went to high school here. Left to go to college at the University of Richmond in Virginia, and came back for a couple of years, but I always wanted to live in New York. And so I found my way there in the mid 90s, in my 20s, and went to work for an investment bank, which at the time was CS First Boston, became a part of Credit Suisse. And I ran their undergraduate recruiting and training program for investment banking. It was a 2-year program. And through that, just kind of found my way into a career in human resources and a focus really on people and business, which is, our company is called PeopleCap. And that's really where we exist, is the intersection of people and capital, I like to say.
Nice.
After a couple of years, I was in New York for 6 years, and then a guy that I had worked with at the bank hired me to be the head of HR for a small tech startup that was located in Santa Monica, California. So I packed up my things and headed west. I was like the Beverly Hillbillies. I went from Tennessee to Los Angeles to Beverly Hills. It was great. I had an amazing experience. This company that I worked for was founded by 2 guys from Caltech, and it was just like every stereotypical startup. It was just people would wear wetsuits into the office after surfing. There's just all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Beers on Fridays. It was great. Had a lot of fun. And our company developed a technology that everybody now knows well called AdSense and AdWords. And so we were bought by Google, and we're an early acquisition of Google's. So I went to work for Google in their People Ops group and spent about 6 years working for Google, primarily focused on acquisitions. So working with the finance folks, helping to bring in companies and integrate them into Google's really famous culture. So that was a lot of fun. And then one weekend I came home to Memphis and one of my girlfriends set me up on a blind date, and the rest is history. I never thought I was coming back, but I came home and when I got married, and have been back in Memphis for about 20 years now. And that's what led to starting PeopleCap, to really bring those really, I think of it as cutting edge talent practices where there's a real shift with the knowledge economy of how we think about people. And
Oh
so
yeah.
bringing those practices that we were experiencing on the West Coast back to the middle of the country. So I've enjoyed that. And because we're a local podcast and because you're sipping bourbon, I will also throw in this detail of my background, which I don't often share. My husband and I own an Irish pub here in Memphis, so I'll give a shameless plug for the Brass Door in downtown Memphis. It's been
Amazing.
12 years, where the world meets in Memphis. It is run every day by our dear friend Seamus Loftus. So stop by and have either a pint or an Irish whiskey with Seamus.
Yeah, I love a good pub. So
Yeah, pubs are cool. I wish we had more pubs, weren't dangerous.
our only one closed here in Jackson.
Yeah, yeah. What a shame. But yeah, a good
Road trip for you guys.
road trip. For sure. We'll go back. We just were in Memphis not too long ago, but yeah, we can.
Well, tell our listeners a little bit about, so working in the world of HR, what are some, I guess, straight off the top of your head, do's and don'ts?
Well, I think, HR has been a really interesting discipline that has evolved in a very significant way, as I was alluding to, over the last 25, 30 years. And that evolution tracks the evolution of talent. So back, you think about when I was growing up, when we talked about talent, we were referring to NBA stars and movie stars. And now we talk about talent as employees.
Right.
And that, I think, really came with the knowledge economy, where we value our people. It's no longer, we're not valued based on our strength on an assembly line where somebody, gets too tired, you just replace them with the next person. We're valued because of our knowledge and what we know and what we bring to these companies. And so it's the war for talent. As y'all know, we lived through that, where competition is fierce for people and what they know. And so that just means that HR had to evolve to be a very, what used to be kind of a transactional function, with comp and benefits and making sure payroll happened, to now a very strategic discipline where you have the CHRO, the Chief Operations, HR Operations Officer in the C-suite, and driving that talent strategy, which has become so important to the bottom line.
Our H officer at work is called the Chief Talent Officer. That's their title. But yeah, that's interesting take on the talent word.
Well, how do companies in today's market, get people interested in coming to work for them? Obviously, you've got all the benefits we know, health insurance, retirement, and all those things are standard. But what makes a company stand out to where someone's like, hey, I want to go work there?
Well, I think the number one thing is culture. And you hear a lot about culture, but
what is culture?
That's a great question. Culture is really a set of values, beliefs, and behaviors that an organization is committed to. And so when we work with clients, we firmly believe in building a really strong culture. And a strong culture is a competitive advantage, and it's also a differentiator. So we try to help our clients discover the culture that they have and fortify that by defining it and then continuing to demonstrate it through the processes that they have going on. So whether that's recruiting and looking for cultural fit, or performance management and making sure people are behaving according to the culture, and even defending it, making sure that people who are running afoul of the culture are weeded out of the organization. So I think that's kind of how we define the culture, but it is a really important thing, and a strong culture. And it's important to note, both attracts people, the right people who are going to excel in that culture, but it also repels other people. And that's a good thing. You never want to have a culture that means that it's everything to everyone, because then it's not a differentiator. So it's important to note that once you build a strong culture, it's going to repel some people. Some people are not going to succeed in it and they're going to leave. And it's actually a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big deal, especially in today's workplace, is, like you're saying, not having a culture that appeals to everyone. that's saying, hey, when we have meetings, some people in here are going to be uncomfortable. And the reason being is because we have a standard. And, if you're not
meet it, Cindy. So get out.
and if you're not living up to the standard, then, we're going to talk about that and try to get you to the standard. I mean, obviously people go through things, but you got to have that standard that's set. And I think Nick Saban said it, you can't have.
How many times are you going to quote Nick Saban?
He's the greatest at building a culture, a winning culture.
Back to Alabama football.
But he says, hey, you cannot have low performers and high performers on the same team because
that is a good quote.
They can't work together. And so I think that transitions to the workplace. If you have someone that's constantly coming in and being negative and bringing down the mood of the office versus you have the person that's coming in, working hard, wanting to achieve.
Thank you, Tyler.
You've got to weed those people out, like you said.
You do. And I think I'll tell you a funny story. I encounter a lot of people. We all hate firing people, right? I mean, you just feel terrible about it. It feels like a failure. Nobody likes that. And early on in my career working for the investment bank, we had a guy that we hired, and he was from a great, high pedigree school, and he comes in, and I'm thinking, okay, this is this is a 2-year program. Everybody makes it 2 years. No one ever gets fired. And the guy's boss came to me and said, look, this guy's not working out. He's spending all of his time in the gym. He's this pretty boy. He doesn't want to do any work. You got to get rid of him. And it was the first time I'd ever fired anybody. And I just thought, this is the worst thing ever. It was like dead man walking, just horrible. And so I finally had the conversation and let him go. And then a couple months later, I was on a plane out to San Francisco from New York and was reading my favorite magazine, Vanity Fair. And I'm flipping through, and he's in the magazine. He's in a 10-page spread as a male model. Like, wow. Oh my gosh, this is me firing him was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah, he's welcome, right?
Yes. And so and I actually ran into him later at Coachella Music Festival, and he's like, you fired me. And I said, I know, but wasn't that awesome? And he said, yes, actually, I'm going to USC Film School and I'm having a great life. And so the point of all that is that I really believe that everybody deserves an opportunity to thrive, to find the opportunity, the job, the place where they are valued and they add value. And so if that's not happening, then we liberate people. We don't fire them. We liberate them. We try to help them find that next place that is going to be great for them, whether that's a cultural fit or, better skill set somewhere else. But I think in terms of liberation.
I think too, that speaks to you though, right? So, and it speaks to the culture that you've built at a company, right? So if you hire somebody and you've got the best intentions in mind, I know Tyler does this from time to time, and he's going to give you absolutely every single opportunity to succeed. And if you still cannot take advantage of it, you still cannot succeed, this just may not be for you, right? And if you just love the gym that much and you hate investment banking that much, maybe this isn't the right career for you. And that's okay. Not every career is for everybody, but we try to make something work because we think that's what we want in our heads, even though that's not necessarily what's best suited for us.
Yeah. And I think when the firing happens, the person is forced to make a decision. A lot of times, people are comfortable. They're going to continue to draw that check, regardless if they're happy in that work or not.
Golden handcuffs.
And, when you do fire them, and hopefully, in most places, hopefully give them some sort of heads up, or they knew it was coming, or there's some sort of severance package in there. But when they do leave the company, they are able to go out and find the career that does best fit them.
Yeah.
And they have the tools to know, hey, I didn't like working in whatever this career field was. Mm-hmm. So yes, it is a negative thing. Yes, it's hard to do. And yes, there is some failure on the leadership's part. I think as leaders, you have to take the responsibility of, number one, I hired this person. Did I do everything I could do to get them to where they needed to be? Also, did I ignore red flags in the interview process because we were trying to get somebody on really quick? Because those things happen. And, how do we not have this outcome again? Going to have it from time to time. But if you're having it, once a month, then it's probably you need to look at yourself.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no doubt. So, Meg, how do you build a culture in a rapid growth company? Because you've got, some of these companies go from 5 people when they're just like a startup to 200 to 1,000 to 10,000 in a matter of 5 years, 10 years. How do you build a culture at that?
Great question. So it happens across, several stages of growth. And we talked about 4 stages of growth. And in the beginning, you have a culture that is really an extension of the founder.
Mhm.
Start companies and the initial employees gravitate towards that person, that personality, and the way
They're
they
usually a
assemble.
visionary of some kind, like a Steve Jobs type, right?
And then as the company grows, it's important that for the culture to exist outside the founder. So that's when we start to walk people through, let's define it. What is it that everybody gravitate? What are the behaviors that you all are engaging in that are important, that are defined, a way that we define this culture that differentiates it from somewhere else.
Hmm.
So we define those. And then, as I said before, then we begin to demonstrate those. And so we begin to then only hire people in who we believe are fits to this culture, and then we make sure that those people remain and are held accountable for creating that culture. So, but it is a hard thing to do. That sounds really easy, giving you like the methodology. It's a
Sure.
really hard thing to do. In particular, it's really hard when companies are growing so fast. We have a company we worked with in Louisiana that had just gotten backing from a private equity group, and they had an incredible amount of revenue opportunity in front of them, and they were ready to go. They had, probably 100 employees, and they needed to scale really quickly in order to service the clients that they were bringing in really quickly because of this revenue. One of the challenges with their culture was that they had a young workforce. Everyone worked really hard. And there just wasn't time or capacity for the people on the front lines to spend hiring and vetting employees and then training them. So, they went through this whole thing about I know what we have to do. We have to outsource training, or we need a training department.
Yeah.
And that wasn't working. New employees were coming in and not staying very long, a lot of turnover, and they weren't able to scale. I mean, the talent, bringing in talent became the limiting factor to their success. And so what we came in and said to them is, you really have to shift your culture. People who are working on the front lines have to have the capacity, and they have to know the importance of helping to recruit talent and also to sit next to people and train them, because your frontline employees, your best employees, are also the best people to teach new recruits how to do the work and how to get up to productivity quickly. And if you don't build in that capacity and don't build in that culture of helping to train and recruit, it's just not going to happen. You can't outsource either of those things, and you cannot outsource your culture. You can't outsource training people in your culture.
Yeah. And I think, having mentorship programs in organizations, when you come in, you're excited, like you said, assign a mentor that's, on the front lines doing the job. Like, yes, you're probably going to still send them through some training as far as the technical things and doing things on the computer and all that type of stuff. But as far as doing the job,
Spoken like a true tech expert, doing things on the computer.
well, I mean, that's what the training is for. As far as doing the job, you need people on the front lines training them to do that. You don't need them training them how to use Microsoft Excel
Other things on the
because they probably don't know how to do it themselves. But anyways, I guess I'm a comedian today.
I thought that was hilarious. You make a great point though, Tyler. And Meg, I wanted to ask, how important is pay when it comes to company culture to you? I've heard two schools of thought here. One school is we pay our employees the absolute best in the industry. We're always looking at it to make sure that they are happy and content with like what they're making, versus people come for the culture. They don't care about the money. So like, who's right there?
Well, I think it's a mistake to think that people don't care about the money. They absolutely care about the money, but I would couch it as table stakes. And that's one of those things where if they feel like they're getting paid enough or getting paid market or what they would get paid somewhere else, then they're not overly concerned about it. It's only when something is out of balance, either the pay is out of balance, they're not getting paid enough, or the work is out of balance. They're having to work too much, too long, for too long of a stretch of time without any reward. So I think that's where you sort of get in trouble, and people start to have conversations about that. I will say there's also, though, an interesting thing happening right now with remote work. And this is where culture comes in. I'm on the board of a company that's 100% remote. And, one of the challenges is building a culture with a fully remote workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Culture helps employees to stick at a company. Culture creates that stickiness. So you have the pay, and that's important. And then you have the culture that people enjoy working there. So then they're not looking for other jobs. If you don't have a strong culture and all you have is pay, then you have a mercenary. And then when you have a mercenary, and in particular, if they're a remote mercenary, so they can change jobs without having to change locations, and they just get a better offer, that's a
Wow.
very dangerous
Yeah.
place to be as an employer, because you'll lose people left and right. They'll get poached. So you have to think in terms of both. I have to
Yeah.
pay my people what they're worth, and I have to create some other stickiness so that they will, whether that's training and development, whether that's, opportunities for promotion, or whether that's culture, a strong culture. I think those are the important things. You have to go above and beyond just pay.
Yeah, I've seen a push towards for especially like younger employees in the industry, because Gen Z wants certain things that baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials just didn't even have an opportunity for when it comes to benefits and things in the workforce, like mental health, like that kind of stuff. Like that's a big push for Gen Z. So if you can provide that kind of a resource for them, and yeah, we offer you a mindset coach like that you can meet with one-on-one once a week, and like it's almost like a therapy session. It's like, oh, that could be that's super helpful to me, that might be something that is very appealing to me versus, yeah, we have a pizza party every week. Every Friday is pizza day at work. Company provides a pizza, which is generally the joke on like LinkedIn and job sites and stuff of like, yeah, here's our culture, and it's like a box of pizza in the break room, right?
Well, it's funny, you bring that up, because I love to tell the story, because Google was sort of the pioneer of all the perks,
Mm,
and people love to talk about all the Google perks and how that created this perk culture. But the reality was the perks were very strategic. So when you're
sure.
working with a huge group of software engineers, what you want is to make sure they're productive for as many hours a day as possible. And how you do that is you give them an amazing workstation with tons of computing power. You feed them, it's feed, water, you get them a
Mm,
haircut, you put a volleyball court out there, you get an exercise, and they will literally stay there 22 hours a day. And that increases the productivity of the firm. And so people love to talk about these perks, but the perks were very strategic.
mm,
Like one of the big ones, they instituted shuttles from the Mountain View campus into San Francisco. So
yeah.
people commute, and they had internet. And that seems like this really expensive thing. People are on these shuttles coding, and
Yeah.
so work is happening. That's an extra hour a day of productivity that they're buying.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's really
one trend that I've seen recently in the workforce is you see, especially a lot of younger people coming straight out of college, and they have these high expectations of these high salaries and, all these perks and benefits. Are y'all seeing that trend? And what do you think's pushing that trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so much more exposure today for younger folks to see where they want to be. I mean, they see it on social media. We are sort of in that instant gratification
Mm,
world, and people want to take shortcuts to get the experience that they need to move up the ladder. And we're also in a different, I'm a Gen Xer, and then beyond me are the baby boomers, and those folks, like, and our parents, went to work for a company and stayed there 30 years. And now you're lucky if somebody stays 2 years,
mm.
because we're in this very, very individual focus arena where you're your own brand, and you're going to go here and get this experience, and you're going to pivot over here and, make all these moves. And so it is a real challenge to explain to people that they've got to work hard, and it takes a while to develop expertise. It's
Yeah.
10,000 hours. There's no
Yeah.
sort.
No,
Right.
that's so true. I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think this is Tyler preaches this on this podcast, and like you've got to work hard. Like nothing is going to just be handed to you. So if you do not work at it, if you do not study for a test, if you do not put the work in, you're not going to get the outcome you want.
Well, and I think, one thing you touched on, bringing value, you can, if you're bringing value to the table, yeah, you can come in and ask for a higher
Sure. Hmm.
salary. But if you're fresh out of college or, whatever, you're just coming into the workforce and you're really not bringing any value, you're kind of a gamble. It's like, hey, if this person comes on, number one, are they even going to like this industry? Who knows if they're going to be good at it or not? So I think being able to be a little humble, come in and say, hey, I want to work hard. And, I think if you come into most companies and you work hard, you can be successful. I mean, obviously look at the company before you start there, make
Right.
sure it is a legit operation. And if it is, and people have been working there for a number of years, it's probably a good place to work.
Well, it's tough too, because you've got social media, and a lot of these kids might have, millions of followers on social media, and they're like, well, I want to go start at this job. I deserve X salary because look at all of the following that I've built. And it's like that does not translate into the doctor realm at all. So
Right.
yeah, doctors make great salaries, and maybe that's not a great example, but like that does not transfer into the insurance sales rep role, right?
Yeah.
So like you can't, there's no guarantee you're just going to be able to post to your followers and they're all going to sign up for your insurance. You're going to get a bunch of clients.
And I think one thing that has driven that is that the millennials were the first generation in history that the older generations could learn from because of technology. So it used to be that every generation was learning from the generation,
That's a great.
right? It was sort of this apprentice model.
Mhm.
All of a sudden we have this digital revolution, and now, we're learning from people who are younger. And so that in some ways I think inflated the sense of value. I think it is really valuable. And I think we, especially my generation, well, I would say especially the boomers, also my generation, and because technology is moving and changing so quickly, we're all a bit dependent on the digital natives who are coming up in today's technology, and they're going to be able to teach us so much about AI. And
Mhm.
so I'm not sure we've really figured out that whole value equation, because I do think there is value to bringing folks in who know that. It's not the same as the expertise. The secret sauce is the marriage of the long time expertise with the technology. And so both sides have to give a little.
I think if you can find like a older generation individual who's willing to sit down, be open-minded with a younger generation individual, have that mentorship program like Tyler talked about, that's that marriage that you were talking about, where that could really bring significant value to the firm. But again, that younger person is going to have to put the time in before they get, because they're going to have to learn that expertise. Yes, they're providing value. Great. That gets you to keep the job, right? Then you're going to be providing even more value with the expertise that you bring. And that's when the pay goes up.
Yep. And I wanted to flip the script a little bit here. So we've been talking about from the company side of things, saying, hey, this is what you're looking for. But say you're someone in the job market and you're saying, hey, maybe I want to go find a job somewhere. What is the best way for an individual to market themselves to find, I guess, the dream job that they're looking for?
Beautiful question, Tyler.
That's a great question.
What a redemption from the computer things.
And I might be old school, but I don't think that it's changed that much. I think the best way to market is still networking. What has changed is how you network. So we now have social media. So LinkedIn, being able to find people through your network, through other folks' network is easier now. It's easier to find, it's easier to reach out. You can probably go to their Calendly and just set up a meeting. I mean, we have technologies now that have made it so easy to meet with folks and pick their brain and see what they know. But I still think that the best way to circumvent huge piles of resumes and set yourself ahead is to come in as a referral to an organization. And that requires networking. And so I do think that people who are gifted networkers are always going to be a little bit ahead of the curve in navigating hiring processes.
That's fantastic. Great point. Again, a great question, Tyler. I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
Meg, tell us a little bit about your book as we're starting to wrap up here. Running the Gauntlet: Proven Strategies for High Growth Leaders. Give us a quick recap summary of it, a little teaser.
Sure. Well, our book, I wrote it with my business partner, Howard Cleveland, and it is available on Amazon and also here in Memphis at Novel Bookstore. And it came out on April 29th. So it's fresh on the market,
Oh,
but
wow.
it
Fantastic.
is essentially an organizational growth model for high growth leaders. So for CEOs and anyone else leading a business, also for board members and for investors as well. And what we do is we take you through a framework that we developed called the Growth Gauntlet. We believe growth is really hard. And so we wanted to bring some clarity and try to demystify the process of growth. So we have a model that we use with all of our clients when we talk about people strategy. So we have 6 elements of a people strategy, and you touched on a couple of those before, but they are sharpen focus, calibrate culture, strengthen leadership, elevate talent, align structures, and amplify communication. And so each one of those 6, I liken it to if you decided at New Year's you were going to get healthy in the new year, you'd have a lot of different things you'd be doing. You'd be working on your sleep, your water intake, you'd be exercising, you'd be eating healthy. Well, this is like that. These are all the disciplines that a leader has to master in order to scale an organization. We chart those across 4 stages of growth to give leaders kind of a roadmap to saying, here's where you are and here's where you need to go. And it helps leaders and investors alike to have those conversations. And we offer some strategies on how to do that and how to grow from one level to the next. So leveling up is what we talk about.
Oh, I love the name. Gauntlet just sounds cool to me. That name is super cool.
Well, thanks. It's, it's such a journey. And every time you get to the new stage, there's a whole new set of challenges. So it is, I think it feels for leaders a lot like a gauntlet, and you need new weapons at every stage.
Nice.
For sure. Spoken like someone that knows what they're talking about.
Yes,
So,
for sure.
well, we appreciate you coming on today. Dakota, what are your thoughts on the bourbon?
Where to begin? All right, I've got a list here that I wrote down. The flavor lasts a very long time, which was great. It was a super nice aftertaste. I liked it. You used the word fireworks. I think that was accurate.
Yeah.
That's a great description of it. Lots of notes. I sensed some honey in there. I got some spice, maybe like some cinnamon, which was a great note, and then a little bit of caramel to kind of finish it off like a aftertaste there. So really all over the map. But really nice burn too. I'm gonna land at a 9.2.
Yeah. So 9.2. So we're going to land at a 9.2.
That's
on the
perfect.
bourbon. I think that's what I gave it, was a 9.2.
It is actually.
So if you're looking for a good bourbon, pick up Cut Above, and you can pick it up at Cheers Vineyard in Gluckstadt. And to all our listeners, however you stream this podcast, if you would give us a rating and then follow us on social media.
On the computer stuff.
Yeah, on the computer. You can do it on the computer. So, and we'll see you next week.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
If you have any feedback or would like to be featured, reach out to us at bourbonandbusinesspodcast@gmail.com.
Or find us on Instagram at Bourbon and Business Podcast.
Thanks again for listening.
Follow us for more content and info on the next episode.